When systems become unstable, they collapse. Not suddenly and not without cause, but inevitably. Every system, no matter how structured, no matter how well-defined, carries within it the conditions for its own breakdown. As knowledge expands, as consequence accumulates, as imbalance grows, tension begins to build beneath the surface. At first, this tension is subtle. Small misalignments, minor disruptions, gradual shifts in balance. But over time, these pressures compound. What was once stable becomes strained. What was once ordered becomes rigid. What was once functional begins to fail. And eventually, the system can no longer sustain itself. It breaks. Across mythologies, this moment is almost always represented the same way: a flood. In Greek tradition, Deucalion survives a catastrophic deluge that wipes away the existing world. In the biblical narrative, Noah endures a flood that resets humanity. In Mesopotamian texts, Utnapishtim lives through a similar event, preserving life while everything else is destroyed. Different names, different cultures, but the same pattern. The flood is not merely destruction, it is reset. Water, which once represented the undifferentiated potential of chaos, returns, not as a beginning, but as a force that dissolves what has become too rigid, too imbalanced, too unsustainable. It washes away structure, it removes accumulated consequence, it breaks down systems that can no longer function. This is why collapse is not portrayed as random. It is not chaos returning without reason. It is a response, a correction, a rebalancing of forces that have drifted too far from equilibrium. Where order once imposed structure and knowledge once introduced complexity, collapse removes what can no longer hold. It strips systems back to their foundations. It reduces them to something simpler, something that can begin again. This is the paradox of collapse. It appears as destruction, but functions as renewal. It feels like an ending, but operates as a transition. Nothing within the system is truly lost in a fundamental sense. The patterns remain. The structures are not erased, they are reset. The flood does not eliminate reality. It clears it. It removes the accumulated weight of imbalance so that a new cycle can emerge. This is why, in every version of the story, something survives. A single individual, a pair, a remnant. There is always a continuity, a thread that carries forward into the next phase. This surviving element is not accidental. It represents persistence. The idea that while systems collapse, the underlying pattern does not disappear. It adapts. It reemerges in a new form. Collapse, then, is not failure. It is function. It is what allows systems to evolve rather than remain trapped in unsustainable states. Without collapse, imbalance would continue indefinitely. Structures would grow rigid, consequence would accumulate without release, and the system would eventually stagnate. Collapse prevents that. It restores movement. It returns the system to a state where renewal becomes possible. This is the deeper meaning of the flood, not simply destruction, but the dissolution of what no longer serves. Not chaos for its own sake, but chaos as a corrective force. And once the waters recede, once the structure has been cleared, something remains. Not the same world, but the potential for a new one. From this point, the cycle does not end, it begins again. But not identically, because what survives carries memory, however subtle, of what came before. And from that memory, the next stage emerges. Renewal.